This episode is sponsored by Monkey Stuff. Monkey Stuff makes things for makers. We're inspired every day by the craft and creativity of makers and design and manufacture tools and accessories to try to make your making life a bit more delightful. Our products are designed in California, by makers and for makers, and manufactured in the USA. Check out our line of pottery accessories and tools at monkeystuff.com. Follow us on Instagram to see what we're up to in our studios, and keep on making great things.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply, located in the Gem City of Dayton, Ohio. As a proud sponsor of this episode, we are happy to help you with all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs. Visit cornellstudiosupply.com for 20% off the largest ceramic book selection of all time. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters, by potters.
Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 561 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Today on the show, I'm joined by Beth and Julia Galloway, who are artists and educators that have helped shape ceramic education in the state of Montana from their teaching at the university. In our interview, we talk about their experience in the state and their varied approach to narrative in their studio practice. They're going to be co-teaching a workshop next month down in St. Pete, Florida at the Morian Workshop Space. So if you'd like to have more information on that, you can go to morianworkshopspace.org. Before we get to that interview, I did want to plug the Patreon for this show. If you're a new or longtime listener, I would definitely appreciate your financial support. There's lots of perks for different levels of sponsorship. And then I am also remastering the old episodes of the show so you get ad-free versions of a lot of those episodes in the first couple seasons that are no longer available on major podcast apps. I just recently remastered and put up the interview I did in 2013 with Richard Notkin. He has some real gems of knowledge there, so I hope you'll check that out. Again, you can become a patron by making a pledge at patreon.com/redclayrambler. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. Well, since you have both have long ties to Montana and also the University of Montana where you have both taught, I thought we would start talking about the history of ceramics at the university. So Beth, can you talk a little bit about that history, about the program and how it's developed over the years?
Well, I actually came here for grad school, so I saw the program in the early 70s, and Rudy Audio was the professor there. And I was lucky to get into grad school because I didn't have an undergraduate degree in art. So I got in on my portfolio, which is nice. And the facility had just been fairly recently taken over by Rudy through a elevator meeting with the president to acquire the old skating rink. And so it was pretty much just a frame building with a gravel floor and a roof and those giant garage heaters that blew air and dried out your pottery. And it was extremely open in feel, and the curriculum was also incredibly open. Rudy was a person who taught in a super laid back way, and he just wanted people to be in there making stuff. And he was just very positive I have to say the word cute, because he was kind of cute in the way he taught. And he just encouraged us in a very generous way to just figure out things on our own, pretty much. So super open. Got my MFA there, and then moved to a small town in southern Montana. I loved Montana. I had never been in a place that felt so open, and I never felt a place where I felt a relationship with the landscape. So I wanted to stay. And I worked in Hamilton, Montana for about 10 years in my own private studio, taught some classes, got some grants. And then when the job opening occurred in Missoula, I decided to apply for a 1 year just to get my fingers into it again. I got the job and I taught with Dennis Voss for 1 year. Rudy was retiring and they were trying to figure out what the situation was. Rudy, I have to just say also, Rudy knew everybody in the field at the time. So he brought in incredible artists. So my exposure to the main people in ceramics was fantastic back in the time. But still it had this kind of, oh, try this, look at this, you know. And so when I got that teaching job, I think I tried to continue that way that I was taught, bringing in lots of visiting artists. We were lucky to have the Bray there, so we were constantly drawing from the Bray to get the students excited. And I think I sort of followed in his laissez-faire way of teaching too. And I taught by myself for a while. I taught with Eddie Dominguez for a while, which was fabulous, and with Chris Nelson for a couple of semesters. And then hired Tom Rippon, who was also, he came from a hands-off way of teaching too, even more hands-off than me. And so I taught with him for a while. And then after he moved back to Sacramento with some health issues, we got to hire Julia and Trey. And Julia, I think, came in and this is what she politely said about our program. Oh, there is a lot of potential here. So she cleaned up the studio, organized the studio in an incredible way, and got us a little bit more in line with academic ideas of the day, I think. And I think upped our game. And then we hired Trey Hill too. So we had for a little while, we had the three of us teaching, which was just remarkable. It was so fun. And then I retired and felt like I left the ceramics department in really good hands.
Well, Julia, talk more about that. When you came into the program, how did you feel like you could benefit the program?
I had been teaching at RIT for about 10 years. And when I was a resident at the Archie Bray Foundation, Beth had residents come over and talk with the students. It was called Bray Day. And we would come and do a demo and a slide presentation. And I remember when I walked into the studio, the ceramic studio has this incredibly open feeling to it. And I walked in and I thought, oh my God, anything is possible here. And it was so uplifting. And it just felt like you could just do anything. Like it was so open. And some of that was the space, but a lot of it was really Beth's sort of attitude, about teaching. And just, I did my demo and she said, wow, I learned a lot from you. I was so thrilled that Beth felt like she had learned something from me, And so I had been working, I had a great job in New York, but when this job opened in Montana, I just wanted to get back to that sort of sense of optimism and space and possibility. And that's why that was just the only job I applied for. I just really was excited about coming back to Montana. So that's sort of how I got here. And, I came here and I was director for a couple of years first, maybe 6 years first. And then I shifted into teaching full time.
Starting being the director, I'm sure, helped to shape the whole school.
Well, I think that was a bit of a complicated time. I felt like I could just bring some structure by writing things down when I was director, just sort of making like a faculty handbook, some stuff like that. But I would say for ceramics, really, I tried to reinvigorate pottery. When I got here, there's just a couple of folks making pots, and it wasn't that there was, I just thought that's a place where I could really interject my knowledge and passion. And so I think that's really what I could bring most to the school, was sort of reintroducing pottery back into the curriculum in a more sort of concentrated way, with a sense of history or contemporary making, or I think probably that's what I brought most to the ceramics program. Beth, do you think that's true?
More than that, I would say, but yeah, pottery for sure. The number of slideshows that you had access to and just would have going in the studio, whether anybody was there or not. Image, introduction of image. Also, you have tons of contacts. You had a wonderful way of giving students, introducing them to opportunities after school, for instance, or during school, finding them residencies or apprentices, or all these kinds of things are fantastic. I would never have done that. Reorganization of the space itself was a
That's
huge
true.
help. She even got the walls painted and scraped all the wads of clay that had been there for decades. made the space much more efficient, I would say. I think together we kind of cleaned up the curriculum, made it more organized, not quite so whatever happens kind of thing. And lots of little things like that. Plus your skill knowledge, your technical knowledge, helping with the tech, all those kinds of things. Just tons and tons of energy that, of course, everybody knows that one of Julia's incredible skills is her energy level. That's what she can bring to any endeavor. So we love that.
I think that Beth and Trey Hill and I became a bit of a tribe. Like we really, it was so fun teaching together. So rather than just being like one person's voice with the students, we got to talk to each other in front of the students, which was like a huge benefit. I also think I came here in 2009, and it was a bit of a change, starting to change in academia, where the sort of loosey-goosey days of academia were sort of over, right? This sort of like assessment was coming in a big way, and accreditation was getting much more important.
Health and safety.
Health and safety was suddenly this huge issue, which people had been, we hadn't, no schools had really paid that much attention to it before. So I think that I sort of came in at a time, and I could sort of see this coming. Like I could see that this was slowly making its way to Montana. And so I could kind of jump on some of that before, where we could do it in our own style instead of just reacting to the requirements that we were getting from the academy.
Julia, this is going to come out right around, I believe, the deadline for y'all's MFA program. Can you just talk about what that is?
Sure, absolutely. It's a 3-year program, and it's there's usually 12 to 18 students in the whole graduate cohort, and there's usually between 6 and 8 in ceramics itself. And the ceramics, the graduate studios are sort of semi-private and off a little bit to the side, but they're connected to the whole main studio. So all of that energy is shared. And we're extremely active in teaching. We like to meet with our students every week, every other week, see what they're making. It's a very, very hands-on program. We're very involved with our students while they're there. And then after they leave, we stay in touch with students for a long time. We have a very strong cohort. Whereas equally interested in sort of conceptual and idea development, as well as building up technical skill and how specific skills and techniques can support your ideas. And we're also, and I think this is one of the most amazing things that Trey Hill has done, is that the ceramic studio and the sculpture studio, which is next door, is completely porous. There's no sort of separation of the two. Students move very freely between working with metals and woods and other materials, found materials, and also working in clay. And it's really just the most sort of energetic and exciting time. And the graduate students work with people in 3D and also out of 3D their entire time through. So they get to be quite diversified.
Yeah, I remember talking to one of my friends who was a graduate from there, and she said that she really learned a lot from teaching drawing. Because
Oh
as a
yeah.
ceramics grad, a lot of times you're going to just teach ceramics. But when you teach 2D things, it challenges you to convey that information in a different way. Can you talk a little bit about how the funding works? I know this is like can get in the weeds, but I think it's important to say to the people listening that like there is funding.
Our funding is actually pretty good. It's not a totally free to be you and me situation, but 3 of your 6 semesters, you're totally funded and get a stipend, and all your tuition is covered. And you do teach in exchange for that. And we work really hard in having you teach different things so that if you want to teach when you leave, you have a much broader portfolio and are much more appealing to schools maybe that are looking for somebody who could teach a couple different things. So that would be like drawing, teaching face to face, teaching online, teaching 3D design, teaching ceramics for non-majors, ceramics 1, sometimes ceramics 2. So I think that when the financial support comes through teaching, so we try to really have that be quite diverse. And we've been very clever about our credits. So the semesters that you are not receiving a total tuition waiver and stipend, we try to have a reduced amount of credits so that so that the amount that you pay is a little bit less. And we also load up the scholarships during that time. So I think that honestly, coming to school is not really the part that costs a lot because your materials are very well supported. The cost of your materials is supported, your firings, of course. I think that a lot of people want to live in Montana right now. A lot of people want to live in Montana right now. So I think the truth is the cost often comes through living in Missoula. But what is great is that the graduate school has just put in to get off campus, on campus housing, especially for graduate students, and they're setting aside units for graduate students that is super affordable. And that's a new thing that's starting this year, and that is great. They're cute little village apartments, and that's going to make a huge difference in the cost and how much it costs to come to school here.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about y'all's work and the way that specifically how you approach narrative based imagery in the work. So, Beth, can you talk about how you approach the figure in crafting narratives on pots?
I always have done these little drawings and cartoons all my life, but I didn't sort of allow myself to use that in my quote unquote serious work until after I got pregnant with my son, which happened, I gave birth in 1987. So it's a long time ago that I've been doing that. But while I was pregnant, I just started drawing a lot more. And then after my son Ty was born, I just started drawing him. And I think that experience just gave me the permission to work more directly out of whatever I was feeling or thinking at the time. And parenting was so prominent in my thinking that I just started making this, what I call the Good Children series, which has kind of lasted for that whole stretch since then. And drawing these little Chinese kids and thinking about family and how to raise a human being in today's society led me to think a lot about my own heritage and how I was raised in my own childhood. And now that I have a kid who is 38, I can't really be saying that I'm talking about him anymore. So it more has to do with the image of the child, which is I always say it has a number of characteristics that I think are common to people and understandable by people. Uh, Children are innocent. They have this incredible sense of potential. There's the quality of play that we never want to lose, and vulnerability. I think that sense that as a parent, you're constantly worrying about protecting the child. And so a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of danger is always present in some of the, or maybe not always, but often present. And then all the ethnic stuff that has come with that. Uh, I think that I've I've never felt I talk to a lot of mixed race people who never feel like they fit naturally into one uh, class of people or another, and that sense of marginality is an identifiable quality that I think a lot of people can relate to, even if they're not mixed race, a feeling of not quite fitting into a certain world. So that kind of crossing of cultures or crossing of different kinds of backgrounds. I like to work with a lot of those ideas so that there's sort of a duality in a lot of the work. And some of that is shown through a narrative quality. I use a lot of text in my work, which is a super easy way of getting a little bit of content or storytelling in the work. Sometimes I do sequential imaging, like in a cartoon, and that becomes very narrative. I'm in a figure drawing group that has been going on for some 30 years, and I study the way little gestures can tell a narrative, like the placement of the hand, or I'm not a super realistic figure drawer, but I can capture gesture, I feel like pretty well. So I think that's a way that you can uh, get some narrative in your work. And I think when I start working, I usually start with my sketchbook, and I usually have some kind of narrative idea that I'm starting with before I put it on a piece. And it usually has to do with something that's on my mind. Like even if I'm just in a grateful mood, I'll make thank you pots, things like that.
I'm so glad you brought up the sketchbook because I think as potters, or as artists in general, it's very easy to have so many ideas that it can be overwhelming. Like there's almost like I think about it like a hose pipe, like there's too much water coming through the hose, and giving that some structure has been really helpful for me. Can you talk about how you actually work through the ideas for a body of work and use that sketchbook to kind of plot out multiple pots that tell a bigger narrative?
Like I said, a lot of times I'll have an emotion or an urge, and I'm not sure what form that takes. And I start pretty doodly. Sometimes I think sometimes I'll start with a pot shape and figure out what do I want to draw on it. Sometimes I start with um, figures and what are they doing, and try to figure that out. And I usually go piece by piece. So I'll try to draw out a couple of different solutions for a single piece. Like there's a page with umpteen drawings of different shapes of pots or different figures doing stuff, and then I'll kind of hone that in. But I have that history of all the ideas that I've had in my sketchbook. So I'll finish one piece, and then I often go back and look at the sketchbook and flip through and see what else there might be. But a lot of times, like with the my inheritance vases, after I've done one, then that vase can give me a launching pad for the next one. It doesn't necessarily go directly back to the sketchbook from there. A lot of times, finishing a piece, you already are going, oh, I got to do this differently next time. I need to make a lid next time, or I got to do this again, but get it better. So a series will often happen just after starting one piece and having that lead to the next. Sometimes I'll have, like with the American Heroes series, I'm just thinking about this is a semi-political, like who is an American hero. So like a Costco shopper is an American hero, like the average person, or the forest worker person who lost his job. So once you have that idea, then you're just going through the gamut of different kinds of people, the librarian, these people that are quiet American heroes. So that's another kind of way of having a series play out, almost like conceptually.
I think what's amazing about your work is that you can seem to move seamlessly between pottery, vessel, and sculpture. Ben, I hope it's okay I jumped in,
Yeah,
but I've been wanting
totally.
to ask Beth this forever. So there's sort of like the useful pots, like the dishes and the cups. And then there's these sort of larger family vessels, the heritage vessels, right? And then we also have the sculptures like the to-go containers or the countries that made profiles. Do you move seamlessly between those, or do you sort of have like sculpture time and vessel time? How does that work for you?
Some of it is gallery driven. Shaller needs a show. Okay, I'm going to make 50 pots. I think usually, like for something like Radius or Lucy Lacoste in Boston, or I'm going, okay, I need some larger scale pieces. I showed with Adrian Arleo this last year, and I went, oh, I got to make sculpture. Show with Adrian. So some of that is I don't know what to call it, commercially driven, I think. And then some of it is just, oh, I haven't made a figure in such a long time. I really need to make a figure. I really got to figure out how to make bigger figures, those sort of long-term goals that kind of nag at you. And so I don't think it's seamless. I think it's somewhat pressure driven or artificial. And like you, I think I'm a person who I push myself. So if I have that little nagging thing, oh, it's time to make a figure, I'll just kind of go, okay, chunk over and move over, get the different workspace going. And then once it's going, it goes. Sometimes there's a little bit of a hump to get over. That's how it works for me anyway. I'm sure it's different for a lot of people. And what I can't believe, Julia, is that you go and go and go. You've been working on this one project for a long time, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, let's talk about the endangered species project. Specifically, I'm interested in how you conceived of the big idea first and then how that got into each of the pots.
I want to say one thing about this school, and I want to say, like, I moved here from New York, which is a very particular way of interacting with people, very East Coast, very fast, super direct, sometimes maybe a little bit harsh. And when I came to Montana, I had to sort of learn not to work that way because Montana is a gentler place to live. And I really learned that from Beth, watching Beth critique students and how she supported students and how really sort of working with the carrot instead of the stick works so much better. And it's completely changed how I walk through my life. And it's just been a great shift in how I interact with the world. So I just had to thank you, Beth.
Oh,
So the endangered species project started, there was a show at the American Ceramics Museum called something about I think it was called We the People. And at that time, I was hearing a lot of sort of frightening things about what was happening with the environment. And I was starting to see it a little bit in Montana. It was when we were sort of starting to become aware of global warming and how hot it was getting in Montana in the summer. And it just seems so different to me. And compared to what I remembered the climate being like when I was a kid. And it was quite startling. And so I had this show called We the People, and I made 5 commemorative plates for species that lived within a mile of the museum that were struggling because of the changing water level in the ocean. And so there were freshwater and saltwater species. And that at the opening, there was this sort of those 5 plates had this huge impact because it was within it was really close. Like these species could be right outside your door. And I was shocked by the intensity of the reaction that people had towards the work. And I thought, oh, I need to pay attention to this. And it was hard because for so many years I've made lovely pots that people want in their house. And suddenly now I'm making these pots that are making people cry or making them angry or making them afraid. That was maybe the hardest part about starting the series. And after I made those commemorative plates, I thought, well, I want to do this, but I want to do it really on a bigger scale. And then I made commemorative plates for all the species in Pennsylvania, which was at Show and Sika. And that show had quite a effect on me, watching people look at the show and seeing how they were reacting to pottery. And that, in Sika, pottery's good. And so I didn't have to get over that hurdle. I could just get into the content hurdle. So, and what was sort of most interesting about that show was that the most popular plates, I mean, I think there's maybe 400 plates of endangered species in Pennsylvania on the wall. And the most popular one was this like little grub. It was like this little worm that everybody remembered from when they were a kid. And it seemed so interesting to me. There were like beautiful birds and beautiful fish and flowers. And no, it was like the grub. And that really let me know about how personally people felt about species. So that was sort of how I started to get involved with the project. Mostly it just felt so good to do something in the face of this climate change, which is so overwhelming. It just makes you, I just always felt bad. Like there's nothing I could do. And so just the act of doing something just made me feel better. And it seemed to be the best way that I could use my tools as a maker and my concern for the environment. Those two could come together.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of over 4,000 objects made by over 1,000 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfieldcollection.com. When I was researching both of you for this interview, I was trying to compare the work on the basis of narrative, where Beth is making visual narratives where things are interacting with each other. But Julia, with yours, what I came to after thinking about it is the narrative is in my own behavior. Like you show me a species that extinct, and it makes me think like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And what can I do differently? Which I think is a really important role about art. So can you talk more about how you want the bigger series? Because now you're making like more than, is it 1,600 endangered species jars? Like you're making a lot.
So I'm working on these burial urns that have portraits of each threatened, extinct, recovered, and endangered species in the continental United States. And I'm at the letter L. And I'm working alphabetically. I'm at the letter L. And the root of the project really comes from when I saw the AIDS quilt, the Names Project, the AIDS Memorial quilt, because what's so just shocking about that piece is that, for many, many years, we didn't really understand about AIDS, or we sort of denied, or it was sort of an invisible pandemic because it was happening very localized to a part of our community that was very hidden. And so when I saw the AIDS quilt, I thought, oh, this is undeniable now. Like you can't say AIDS is just a gay problem, or AIDS is just a, whatever all that very bizarre sort of prejudice was in the beginning. And I was so moved by the scale of it, and the accessibility of it, and how, it's like this huge, huge quilt spread out, and then you'd walk around and it was silent. Like there's hundreds of people there and it was silent and people were taking time to think. So I thought about the similarity with endangered species is that we just don't see those species anymore. So we sort of forget that they exist, which really came from that grub, right? And so I think the root of the Endangered Species Project is to just make something which is not visible. And then that's my job, is to sort of put it out there. It's not my job to tell you what to do or to lecture you about right whales, or like, that's not my job at all. My job is to show up for those species and then share what I find to be beautiful with them, which is tricky because some of the species are kind of gruesome, right? Like spiders, ew, like, so I have to find something really beautiful in each species so that I can share that with you. Um, so I feel like that my job is to show up for those species, and then your job is to sort of like observe it and then figure out where you go from there. But it is very uncomfortable for me about how upsetting it is to people. That always just makes me squirm. And a friend of mine said, well, that's what good art often does, is it makes you think. But I still feel a little uncomfortable with that part of the project.
Do you think that the fact that these drawings in the newer work, the carvings, are on pots, do you think that helps kind of get past people's denial? Because pots are in the home, they're objects that they're sneaky objects. Like they slide in and they get in there. Do you think that helps with the content?
I think it does. I think that absolute pots are super accessible, right? We all understand what they are, and they can be really distant and fine art kind of pots, or they could be like close pots in your kitchen or on your dashboard. And I think that makes it super accessible. I think the commemorative plates were nice to look at, but were nice to look at, and people like to hang them up together, and the interaction between the species or things like that. I think people really liked, and they were like lovely, like blue and white and silver. That's like beautiful to look at. But the urns, that is a different kind of psychological punch, because culturally we've been using urns for many, many cultures for a long time. And it's a little spooky. It's a little bit scary to think about these species in the urns. The urns are sized, they hold about they're about the size of a gallon, because that's the scale that most human ashes are. If you're an average, like 6-foot person, if you were cremated, you'd be about a gallon of ash. So that's where the human part comes in, is in the scale, but then also that it's so clearly hand carved, and the urns are hand thrown. They're all a little bit of a different shape. So I hope that creates empathy in a sort of a different way as well.
What you're talking about is giving yourself a system to work through the idea. Like you said, you're on the letter L. You have researched them, cataloged them, then you make the work. And Beth, you also mentioned that like you like to challenge yourself. So what do you, both of you, what do you think the value of creating a system or a central question that you can then dig into for a while in the studio? What do you think the value of that is?
I just want to back up 1 second and talk a little bit about the relationship between the message and the viewer or the purchaser of the work. Because I'm always kind of pondering that for myself. I I want to use what I'm good at in a way that helps the world, in a way that Julia does with her work. And I don't do it with every body of work, but a couple of bodies of work, I have tried to make it so that when somebody buys the work, they have an act that they have to perform. So when you buy the work, from sort of an environmental series that I did, I had little cartoons of people doing things that were helping the environment, like sorting their plastic, which they could recycle and which they couldn't, or digging an organic garden, or buying a new bicycle so they could bike to work. And these were little cartoons. But when you bought that, you had to study a sheet of about 10 nonprofits that were helping the environment. And you had to select one, and I would send the proceeds to that organization. And they were all not the big name ones. They were all obscure ones, like the Sustainable Phosphorus Project, or the alternative burning, what is that? Alternative incinerators, things like that. So a person would have to study that, and then before they could buy the piece. Or I had a piece where you had to register people to vote before they could buy the piece. So it's hard with art in general because of that sort of passiveness that comes with viewing art. One of the things I like about utilitarian work is, like you say, it's not just going to sit on the wall, Julia. They're going to handle it. They're going to take it down and hold it and touch it. And that is a little bit stronger of a connection. So I do want to think about ways in which um, we can do more than either preach to the choir or just aestheticize a person's experience, which I think is a political act in itself. But I think we can add a little bit. So maybe that leads into thinking about what did you call it? A process or a format?
Exactly. Yeah. Format that pushes you in the studio.
I think if there's a single thing that I'm still working on, it's a way in which to use my work to be more than decorative. And I know people say, "Oh, your pots make me so happy," and that's good. But I'm still want to see if there's a at least to include into my process a way to say more. Um, Beyond that, I think it's I hate to say it, but it's usually a lot of it is for me is deadline driven. If I know I'm going to be making um I mean, when you've been doing it as long as I have, you have a lot of rituals, right? You have the slip cast time, you have the throwing time, you have so that the processes themselves give you a lot of structure. And then if you know where the work is going to be seen, I think it's easy for me to go, okay, I can use this kind of format as a vehicle to express the issues that I'm working with. So it doesn't seem like I'm ever reinventing my format or anything. It seems pretty natural according to the circumstances that involve either where the work is going to be seen or what I'm obsessing about at any particular moment.
What you're saying makes me think about your music. You're also an accomplished musician. And within a melodic structure of a song, like there has to be the bass drum interact, or depending on your instruments, like the bass line, which you're going to hold down, is going to really give the whole thing structure. But because there is structure, you can improvise. With no structure,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
improv goes crazy.
Yeah. I am a bass player and I do claim a lot of credit for influencing the song. So I love being a bass player. It's not out front, it's not the prominent thing, but it's collaborative, the way ceramics is often. You're working with other people and it's it's foundational. Um, it's really fun for me. So yeah, and I always said that if I were to compare my ceramic work with a musician, it would be Thelonious Monk, who's so individual and so unique and so playful. And but he very much works off his basic structure of his composition. A lot of them are his compositions, and you can even in his soloing, you can hear the melody all the time. He's my hero.
What I think he was such a master of is learning how to not play notes, but to create that note in the mind of the listener. Because he would play a melodic structure, leave out like the third or fourth note, but your brain puts it in there. Like it's such a good proof that as humans, like we fill in the gaps, so to speak.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I feel like because he does refer, you hear the melody of the song all the time in his soloing. And then he works with sound a lot, like he'll bang. His touch was really different. He played with really flat fingers instead of arched fingers, and he would get a different sound. Anyway, it's interesting.
I know we just went on a musical tangent.
Yeah.
But Julia, coming back to this idea of challenges, like why, because this is you've done this probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 times in your career where you set a larger project and will work on that project for years. What's the value of taking on the big task in your life?
Nobody's ever asked me that before. My answer is not a great one. I I just I just can't imagine not. That's just how I think, and I just honestly, I like things that are difficult. I like to be able to grind it out. I like to dig in, and there's always some part in the project where I feel like, oh God, if I knew it was going to be this, I might not have done it. But that's when I know I'm onto something. Do you know?
Sure.
And when I have that feeling, that's when I'm like, bingo. You're in the right place. By nature, I just push. I just push, and I push the field or push the idea, or and sometimes I just make that work because I want to see it. Like I want to see like 1,400 cups on a wall. I want to see what that looks like. Um, and and I think I love those few minutes of satisfaction when it sort of comes together. It's very, very short-lived, but it's like a beautiful 20 minutes where I'm like, "Phew, wow, look at that." It's like this sort of opening, this sort of cool breeze, and then I think, "Okay, back to it." And I just think that's how I'm wired, is that I just like to lean into things that are difficult because I find them. I think the challenge is exciting, and it forces me to learn more, and it gives me anxiety. Like a little bit of anxiety, I think is good. It's a push, like a little bit of nervousness or a challenge. I don't, like being a little bit busy. There's some energy in that I just love. I just love like that sort of repetition and energy that I get in these large projects.
Julia has always been a big picture thinker, and some people are like that, and it's very impressive. It's similar to when she came to teach with me. She saw a bigger picture than I saw, and including the way she was as chair, or the fact that she got a Regents Professor um, award, which it's looking at a bigger picture. I think that's a characteristic of your nature. It's pretty unique and pretty admirable in our,
Oh,
yeah.
thanks, Beth.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, actually, this is a good thing to wrap up on. I wanted for y'all to talk a little bit about how the arts feed Montanans and why the arts are important in a rural state. Because Montana is one of the lowest population states, but also one of the largest landmass states. So it's a very interesting mix. So can y'all talk about how the arts sort of feed the culture there?
Well, I'll just say that the openness feeds us as artists. For me, that was something that hit me right away, the lack of population. It gave me a sense of, oh, I can start this, I can start a food co-op, I can start a music group without knowing really how to play the bass. You know, things were available. You didn't feel like it was all done and set. And what you talked about in terms of the radio stations, and the sense that people were looking for it. They want it, and you don't there's an audience for you. Missoula also is a great city because there's huge support for us artists. It seems like there are so many things going on every single day, and there's people show up for everything. You don't have to, I don't know, maybe it is because there are fewer people, so we reach out to each other and gather and want the stimulation. I don't know. I just feel like it's a great place to make and a great place to gather and learn from and hear and see. I don't know, Julia, you got any more to add to that?
I mean, I feel like when I moved here, there's just not as many people, and so you have to take care of each other. You have to show up for each other. And, I had a studio fire a couple of years ago, and people from like 8 hours away were calling and saying, like, I can come do sheetrock on Sunday. Like I just, like, it was just, I mean, I just think when there's fewer people, you need each other more. You need to take care of each other better. And I think we're also more forgiving for each other because even if we disagree, we have to get along. And that's sort of been my feeling since I've moved here. And I also just think the landscape's intensely inspiring. And living somewhere where there's so much openness and possibility. I mean, there's so much sort of hope and possibility here. Ironically, the economy is not that great. There's not that many jobs here, but somehow there's this sense of optimism in the state that I just love. And I think for me, the accessibility to so many people where there's not that many people. I think that contradiction, I think for me it's really fantastic. And I don't feel like the artists compete with each other here. I feel like we lift each other up. Maybe that's because there's not a ton of resources and we need each other, but I never feel like I compete with other artists here. I always feel like, oh, what do you need? Sheetrock, let's go.
Yeah, and some of that I think is the quote unquote frontier spirit, like we're going to work together because we can't survive without each other. I mean, some of that, it's a beautiful landscape, but it's harsh, like if you're not in a city, it can be tough living.
I think sort of the ruralness, maybe there's more physical space between people, but I think sort of psychically we're all kind of in it together here, I guess is how I feel about the ruralness of it. People kind of get pottery. They sort of get it, whether they like it or not, or whatever it is. They sort of understand it. It's like this, so somebody maybe who lives like way outside of Havre, really far away, the chance that they have a little handmade cup actually living in Montana is pretty high. And so there's something about pottery, I think in particular, and also maybe with music or something, there's an accessibility that I think that breaks down the isolation that can happen in rural communities. I don't know, Beth, do you think that's true?
Yeah, I do. And then what you said about the non-competitive nature, I think that's very true. The I'm in that drawing group, and we have people of all levels. We have pretty professional people, and we have people who are pretty much Sunday painter types. And I brought Sue Coe, you know who Sue Coe is? I brought her to one of our drawing groups, and she just looked around. She said, "This could never happen in New York." It's just a real positive group of people who support each other. Yeah, and I mean, probably potters are more also, we have that support each other and work together attitude.
I think some of that also could be the nature of ceramics,
Mhm.
right? That a lot of people in ceramics don't work in isolation, right? They need to share facilities, or so a lot of that I think is at the foot of the Archie Bray Foundation that set such a strong sort of supportive ceramic community in the state. So many people come to the Archie Bray as residents and then move here,
Yep.
and so we're all sort of really bonded by material and process. And I think that really might be at the root of what we're talking about. And we have this great group called Montana Clay, and
Another Julia big idea that no one would have thought of. It's great. I mean, she just made this website, and it connects all the potters of the whole state. And like you said, it's the third largest landmass of a state in the country, only after Alaska and Texas. And yet it's one of the lowest populations. So for a potter from Wolf Point to know that there's a potter in Ekalaka, or it's just it's a good thing. And it's a really nice little supportive website, and tells people what's going on, who's showing where, and what people need, what people have for sale. It's great. A good invention.
yeah.
Well, to wrap up, I just wanted to thank you both for taking the time to do this. And I also wanted to tell people that you're going to be teaching together down in Florida at the Morian workshop space in St. Pete. That's going to be coming up. I believe that's February. Is that right?
Yeah.
That'll be a good opportunity for people to come and work with y'all.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to
Yep,
be a
it'll be
lot
great.
warmer down there.
Yeah, I know. It's by the ocean. I'm excited.
Yep.
Well, thank you both.
Well, thanks,
Thanks
Ben.
so much, Ben.
Thanks for doing this. It's a good service for us ceramic folks.
I'd like to thank Beth and Julia for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to chat with them. I'm such big fans of their work. I own so many pots of both of theirs, so it's always a pleasure to talk to them. In addition to all the things that Beth does in her career, she is also an illustrator that has multiple children's books, one of which is one of Zosha's favorite books. It's called Auntie Yang's Great Soybean Picnic. It is still widely available out there, so if you have a child and you're looking for a wonderful story that is illustrated with ceramics, you should check out that book. I also wanted to take a minute and thank our sponsors. That includes Monkey Stuff, the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art, and Cornell Studio Supply. If you or your organization is interested in becoming a sponsor on the show, you can get in touch at talesofredclayrambler.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.